Here are 3 great drills in order to change direction faster. Number 1 is a cone drill transferring into hurdle cuts and pulls, more focused directly on cutting or lateral movement. Number 2 is a hip turn drill to work on cranking out bigger turns in an exaggerated setup. And number 3 is resisted for more intensity, contrasted out into some more specific directional work to hit all angles in which most athletes have to change direction. Before we get into each one, I want to note this at the beginning of the video. Something that's incredibly important about this concept. When it comes to change direction and agility, I think a lot of people like to put them in the same, if not similar, category, generally misinterpreting what agility actually is. If there is no reactive stimulus, it's not really agility training. But that's okay, because in my very next video, we will go over my favorite and I think some of the best agility drills to do and what it actually is, by definition. Depending on when you're watching this video, it's probably already out, and if it is, it's in the description below or on the channel. Number 1. Set up 3 to 4 rows of cones. Each row should be about 3 to 4 feet across and separated far enough to create a lane to shuffle through. The length of each row will be slightly dependent on someone's height, but for the most part, you should be able to hit 2 shuffles and then cut. Then 5 to 10 yards out from the cone lines, take 3 hurdles, set them up, and finally 2 to 3 pulls if you have them with a cone out in front. You don't have to have all of this equipment and set up each section. Whatever equipment you have, you could just do 1 or 2 of these sections. The reasons for the cones going into the hurdles, going into the poles, is because the varying degrees or angles it forces you to go into in order to cut. The first row when cutting through will be the sharpest cuts, whereas you want your outside foot or leg to go outside of the cones, all while the inside leg is actually going over the cones. Shuffling or sliding between each row, your outside leg should punch at about a 45-degree angle in relation to the floor, all while you stay nice and low to punch or push off that outside foot, after being sure to accelerate and transition to the next section as quick as possible. When it comes to change direction drills, the cutting needs to be fast. That's the easy part. The hard part, or part that oftentimes gets overlooked or cheated on, is the transitions inside of the drill. When changing direction, you have to change speed and transition as quickly as you can. If not, that cut or change of direction will not be as effective no matter how fast you do it. Then when it comes to the hurdles, because of the obstacle change and setting up something that's higher off the ground, the cuts will have to be slightly different in the sense that you can't pick the inside foot up the same. You will still want to maintain a low center of gravity and be sure that you're almost leaning over those hurdles to maximize the angle at which you can cut faster. Then another final quick transition to the poles. The height of the poles provides for the most realistic obstacle in comparison to playing your sport, because it's just like a defender with actual height in front of you. Through the poles, your lean and shoulders will have to adapt to maneuver quickly in order to cut hard. And at the end, sprint out fast. Any style of drill like this can be adapted based on the space that you have, especially if you're indoors. Also, you can adapt it based on which equipment you have. For training and speed purposes, run this drill starting out on the right side or left for 5 to 6 times per side. In total, 10 to 12 times through the drill, just switching sides halfway through. This drill with max effort can be pretty taxing on the legs if you're really going at it. So I would suggest starting off with 1-minute breaks minimum, and then over time, increase the breaks to at least 2 minutes long. Last note on this drill, and for the remainder of the drills we're going to talk about, when it comes to working on change of direction, is you need to be sure that you focused on slowing down fast. Yes, you want the cuts to be fast in that brief moment. You want the transition post that cut to be fast like we talked about before. But the final little key or nugget to really increase your speed is you need to be able to intentionally and quickly slow down as fast as you can. Drill number 2, think of it as like an elongated 5-10-5 or pro agility drill. There are a few reasons it's longer and a couple of different components to work on during this drill that most athletes don't really think about. When changing direction, in the sense of having to turn around 180 degrees, you're required to turn your hips, or at least the quicker and more effective you are turning them, the faster you'll be able to turn around. Most athletes will feel more comfortable turning their hips one direction in comparison to the other. For example, righties, when they turn their hips, they tend to feel more comfortable with having their left foot in front as their plant foot. This is because in their sport or on an average day, that left leg is used more as a stability or balancing leg with whatever they're doing throughout their day or inside their sport. Here's a couple examples. Soccer players plant on their left and then kick with their right. Baseball players plant left, throw right. Or just on a daily basis, you probably put your left leg into your shorts or pants first, balance on that leg, and then throw in the right. If you don't believe me, next time you got to put your shorts on standing up, put your right leg in first and see how unbalanced you feel in relation to how it normally feels. So all that being said, when it comes to change of direction, we want to work both hips and both styles of turns. The reason for that is we want a more well-rounded athlete, and it'll actually reduce your risk of injury. An athlete that has a huge difference or disparity on one side versus the other has a higher risk of injury over time. This drill setup is really easy. Put a ring or cone down 15 to 20 yards from your starting point and another 10 yards out. Sprint to the furthest cone, touching the ground with the outside hand, and sprint back to the other cone. Touch facing the same direction in opposite hand, then sprint out of the drill for 10 to 15 yards. The hip turns and setup is simple. The first 5 to 6 times you run this drill, just be sure to face the same direction on both touches or turns. Being sure to also touch the ground with the outside arm, really reaching, so each time it'll either be right-left or left-right. Then the next 5 to 6 times do the same thing, but facing the opposite direction. The reason for the hand touch is because it forces a more exaggerated or difficult cut, which will increase the intensity of training. In a game, you're obviously not going to touch the ground generally when you're cutting or changing direction. Then some progressions to this drill is simply just modify the distance between the cones or modify the distance that you're actually moving. By increasing the space or distance you have going into the cone, you're going to increase the speed that you can take into the corner, increasing the momentum, making the cut more challenging. You can also run it with same-sided hip turns, which I think works better with shorter distances between the cones in the middle, because it really forces you to have to turn the hips hard, get into a low position, and launch out. Just be sure to do both sides overall. And the last bit is later on you can do this drill without touching the ground, but I would suggest starting off with touching the ground and then go up where you're not. It's harder. Drill number 3. Banded shuffles I put as an option because I feel like more people have access to a band. Only issue is you have to have a partner to do these. I'll go over them briefly and then go to the bungee, which doesn't require a partner but is more versatile and you do need a bungee, which they aren't really too bad on Amazon. I'll link this one below in the description. With the lateral shuffles, just put the band on around your waist and get low and shuffle as fast as you can for 10 to 15 yard bursts. Obviously, I hope. Don't let go of the band and don't let the band stretch too far. With the bungees, you have that added resistance just like you have with the bands, but you can actually cut and change direction with these. Over the gym, we also use them for other concepts like skaters or even some resisted starts for sprinting. With the bungees, hit 5 to 6 cuts on one side, take a break and do it again on the other side. One thing that we haven't gone over yet on cutting is lines of force when it comes to optimizing your positioning. In the first drill, the inside foot comes off the ground, putting all the force with the cut on the outside leg, all while trying to cut off of that leg. When a cut like this, both feet are on the ground and the inside foot should be more of the absorbing foot, all while the outside foot can stay stiff, taking some of the force, but also focusing on pushing harder. Your posture needs to be leaning in the direction in which you're trying to go. Your feet should both come off the ground for a split second and shift over to hit about a 45-degree angle on both shins. This shift in angle will put you into a better position to take the force in one direction and transition it into the direction you wish to go. Then lastly for this video, after you do the bungee cuts, you want to contrast them into some style of sprint. I have 3 styles we're going to go over, one of which is directly related to the bungees and 2 just kind of as bonus content that I really like. The first one is simple. Shuffle back, then cut out, in the same way you just did with the bungees. Shuffle back, shift your feet underneath you, and attack out as quick as you can. If that style feels a little awkward, you can also shuffle forward, cut back, and then immediately cut out into a sprint. The other one is set up 2 cones 5 yards apart and immediately turn around and attack out. Make sure you do both sides and really turn those hips. And the final one I think is the most fun of the 2, especially if you like to juke or jab, is set up 2 cones just like you see here, and you're going to go towards the first cone, jab out, and accelerate into a sprint. There are all the drills. Be sure to go check out the agility video as well. Some of these drills directly correlate to that concept, or I've taken these drills in some way, shape, or form and added a reactive component that you can progress with these drills or add into your training. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and catch you in the next one.